Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining me on hashtag No Limits. Hashtag No Limits is about people who society has placed limits upon, but who have busted through those limits. Ophelia says in Hamlet that we know who we are, but not who we will be. And I believe that to be 100% true, and that there is no better example of that than the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. For those who don't know, the caterpillar literally dissolves into cells and then reforms itself into the butterfly. As if that wasn't challenging enough, it then has to struggle. It literally has to struggle to get out of the cocoon in order for its wings to be strong enough for it to be able to fly. And while that is no easy task, neither is busting through the limits that society has placed upon a person. And my guest today, Robyn, has some amazing stories of people who have busted through limits, and she has been along to support them along the way. She is my first, I think, speech language therapist or speech language pathologist that I have had on the show. And so I am excited to share her with all of you. Robyn, thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm fine. Thank you so much, Shelley. I really appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. I am very thankful to our mutual friend, George, who
Yes,
told me about you. And so, for George, hopefully, if you're watching,
thank
shout out
you.
to
Yeah.
George Bailey. He is the president of Z Pods. And if you don't know about Z Pods or you want to know more about George, he was on an episode. Oh my gosh, he was one of my early episodes. So I'm at 77 now. He was probably in the teens or 20s, I think, when
Wow.
his episode was on. So yeah, I've known him for a little bit now, and he's always helping me out by introducing me to people who are busting through those limits. So tell us about yourself and what brought you to what limits brought you to our show.
So, as you said, I'm a speech language therapist. I've been practicing for over 35 years. Um, my, I guess you'd say my passion is working with children on the autism spectrum. Um, I I retired 2 years ago from special school district in St. Louis County and worked in early childhood special ed and have gone through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of IEPs. But when I retired, my last like 8 years, I had primarily worked with children on the autism spectrum. And I found that there is such a need for parents' involvement and parents' knowledge in knowing how to help their children at home. Speech language therapists, we do an amazing job making differences in kids' lives. But the problem is in the school district, and even when I did private practice or worked at Children's Hospital, it's like the time is so limited to give information to the parents to help their children at home. So after I retired, I started my business, RW Language Therapy and Consulting, and it's specializing in autism, family support, and coaching. And also at that time, I became a certified autism specialist because I wanted to specialize, working with these families. I recently became a board member of Autism Speaks,
Oh,
as well
awesome.
as George. And when I was working at the school district, working with children with autism, I became a certified Hannon. The Hannon Center is a not-for-profit organization that trains speech language therapists and teachers how to help parents incorporate everyday life, communication or education in everyday life activities.
Okay.
So I became a certified instructor to teach a course called More Than Words, which I've taught for 10 years.
Oh wow. And
So,
I sorry to interrupt you. I
no,
thought you were finished. So that's pretty cool. And as you were talking, my brain went, dummy. She's not the first speech language pathologist you've had. I had my friend Courtney, but I when she was on, she was my friend Courtney. She wasn't
sure,
as she
sure,
wasn't coming on as a speech language pathologist. So
of
Courtney, if
course.
you're watching, I'm sorry.
Oh no,
Um,
he understands.
but yeah, so tell us a little bit, some of the differences maybe in the approach that you would use for a child who has a diagnosis or eligibility of autism versus someone who has a different eligibility for special education or for coming to see you in your private therapy now.
So with my practice, I do everything through Zoom. And a lot of people, just because of the pandemic, we've
Hmm.
all had to resort to Zoom, but I continue it because it's so highly effective for what I do. So I am not a typical speech language therapist in the sense that my approach is teaching families. I do work with children, but my most important thing is to teach the parents and the grandparents and the aunts and uncles, whoever is involved in that child's life, how to use strategies to help a child communicate functionally or naturally during everyday routines, during going potty or opening a door, or wanting something, getting dressed, taking a bath. It's those everyday life experiences that are so important for parents and family members to know, or our caregivers to know, how to help their child better communicate. Most children on the autism spectrum, you have to teach them differently because their learning style is different. And through this course that I teach, this program through Hannon Center, the More Than Words, I teach an 8-week program. It's like an hour session each, and it's all like evidence based, and it teaches you a progression of how to build a child's functional, or just like awareness,
Hmm.
because so many kids on the autism spectrum, they're not aware of you, or they use you to get what they want.
Right.
So you're building just that connection through like people play or people toys. It teaches strategies how to follow everyday routines, like brushing your teeth. So many kids on the autism spectrum, they're so focused on something that those transitions are so difficult for them. So there's strategies to teach a child with communication and visuals to be able to help a child naturally transition to do something else that they need to do, get dressed, get their pajamas on, or come to eat. And then, I teach parents how to, like, different levels of play skills, types of play skills, according to their child, because I individualize it to each family. If their child isn't playing with toys, then we teach them how to play with a toy.
Oh,
If
wow.
if a child is playing with toys, then we teach them how to add communication. And it goes on from there. It's pretty detailed. It's like a probably 10-hour program over 8 weeks.
Hmm. Well, that's absolutely incredible. So I was writing some things down because there was so much that you said just in that little part that I want to sort of pull out and talk about a
Sure.
little bit more. So first of all, the title, More Than Words. Um, isn't it something, I think the statistic is like 93% of the average communication is outside of the actual words?
I believe so. I don't know offhand, but definitely. I mean, so many parents, when I meet them, they're like, "Oh, my child's not talking," and it's like, "But your child communicates." And,
Yes.
and that's the confusion is, everybody um, feels that talking is the only form of communication, but using backup systems, using pictures or signing, or gesturing, or using a picture communication system or a device, those are all forms of communication.
Yeah.
And kids on the autism spectrum, they need that backup system, because to me, every child has a right to effectively communicate. And so many parents are afraid not to let them do the other types of, nonverbal communication because they feel like it's going to replace it. But and actually it enhances their communication. And their behaviors change because, obviously behavior is a tremendous form of communication, screaming, tantruming, biting, kicking, throwing. Those are all forms of communication. And a lot of times parents don't realize, that their child's not effectively communicating to express their frustration or their unhappiness or their hurt or whatever the problem is.
Yeah. And that's so I think that sentence that you just said there about, you didn't say it in this way, but all behaviors are communications. That's probably why George put us together, because that is something that I talk about all the time. Just in that regard in itself, because it's exactly what you said. And we tend to look at the negative or the unwanted behaviors and say that's communication. And it is, but it's also, if your child is happy, if your child is, if your child is smiling or laughing, that's communicating that they're happy. If your child is, calm and they're just chilling out on the couch, that's communicating that probably they're relaxed. Maybe not, but probably. And so, the whole behaviors or communication thing is huge. And I don't know if George told you or if I told you when we met the first time that I wrote a book. And in the book, I have a couple of stories that the parents communicated with their children who the world perceived as non-communicative.
Right.
But yet these parents and children had developed their own way of communicating with each other.
Right.
Kind of like, I know, I kind of compare it to like twin speak, where twins, they seem to have that like just natural, like, I know what you're thinking and I know what what you're wanting to communicate to me. And so, that to me is huge that you said that. And so the fact that you brought up of parents don't realize that when their child is having a meltdown or kicking or screaming, if it's not a full meltdown, but it's also teachers and society. I mean, it's really, most people that when that is happening, that person is trying to communicate something.
Right.
So that really excites me that you are working with families and not just the individual, because we tend to focus on the individual so much that we forget that there's all these other parts that need to understand too. It's not a one-way street.
Well, and when I was working at special school district, when I've been working, since the beginning, I became a Hannon speech language therapist really 30 something years ago. So I've always used that approach, that mindset of helping families. But when I, about 10 years ago, when I started working in an ABA classroom for, most of the kids in there had an educational diagnosis of autism, and obviously their behaviors were quite significant in my class. Behavior, what I saw is all these parents, they were just like, they didn't know what to do. So that's when I went to Texas and became certified, because Hannon only trains you in certain, they train you internationally, but you can only take, there may be 6 classes a year that you can take to become certified. So, but it was so important to me to be able to educate parents. And what I tell all my families is, all the therapy in the world is going to be so beneficial for your child. But if you don't know how to carry over and the strategies to use, it's so limiting. Right. And your child, and I always tell everybody, it's like every child has, should have the ability to effectively communicate. And, what I always look at is parents are their first teacher. I work with a lot of parents as teacher organizations through school districts. But parents are a child's first teacher. And if we can empower parents to know as much, if I can empower parents to know as much as I do to help their child, my kids, that I work with, they make phenomenal progress because the parents are informed and they know and they carry over. So my therapies through Zoom, a lot of times I jokingly say like I'm like a little birdie in the window and like watching, like I'll tell the parents, like, try this. Why don't you say this to your child? Instead of me directly working with the child, it's more of me feeding the information to the parents, and the parents are practicing. And then they practice the week to see how it goes. And then we meet again, like once a week, typically.
Yeah. That is so awesome. That's an amazing, again, that's just such an amazing approach. And I think, what you said too, of, if we could empower parents with the same knowledge that we have gained over our careers, how much different families' lives would be, and how much different than society's lives would be, because they would not just keep that to themselves. They would share that with their, the child's aunts and uncles and grandparents and church members and neighbors and, that sort of thing. Because when we know, we want to share what we know.
Exactly.
And so that's just so cool. I'm so excited to learn more about this. So tell us, you mentioned before, like a communication device or, maybe some sign language, but what are the other things, that you teach about that are functional communication wise and ways to communicate effectively?
So typically what I'll do is I'll ask parents to give me a list of a child's favorite foods, the things that they request, the things that typically are snacks and drinks. And then we go to their favorite toys. And so what I do is I create pictures, and depending on the level of comprehension for the child, some kids may need a photograph picture of that, like the specific brand of yogurt. And then other kids may just need like a, it's called Board Maker, which is a program that you can make pictures and things that typically speech language therapists across the world use. And so I could use Google Images. I could use, like cartoony type of pictures. And so I teach parents, I'll give parents like, maybe they might have like 20 pictures or 10 pictures of foods. And I'll have them put it on like a mini size poster board with Velcro. And then I'll teach parents how to teach the kids to, request for the things that they want. And then the parents, I teach them how to model what the child's requesting. That's one thing that many, many speech language therapists do. It's kind of like a starting point. And, I move it to toys. I might move it, I might have one for open door, and different people, different speech language therapists, some put them in like a binder. I try to do it pictures in the room that the person needs, the kid needs. They're not going to go get food pictures in the living room if they're in the kitchen. Right. So if it's easier access, the kids visually see it, and it's just that bombardment. There's so many easy things that could be created. And, and I create whatever a family needs, I'll create it. I email it to them. And then I tell them step by step, you want to laminate it. You want to get Velcro, and how to do everything. Prior to COVID, I used to do everything and bring it to their houses. But unfortunately now I'm stuck with just, telling them. But it's so life-changing. And the kids' behaviors just decrease because they get what they want. Because so many kids, they're screaming or they're pulling their parent, and the parent's like, I don't know, and the kids get frustrated. But if you have those visual choices of the things that they really, really want, odds are it's going to be one of those.
Right. And when you were talking about laminating and Velcro, I was smiling because I should have had stock in both of those products when I was a teacher, because I bought them constantly, because I did, like I said, not only in my book, but the two that were in the book are, they happen to be former students. And so, yeah, I had visual schedules for a majority of my students. And, we would just do all kinds of things. And all teachers probably should have stock in laminating material, because we're all running around laminating things constantly to reuse them.
Right. Well, because kids will tear them.
Well, yeah. And if it's something that you want to use or move around with and keep clean. But I remember not just Boardmaker, but also something called PEX.
Oh, yeah.
I worked with a phenomenal speech language pathologist, Donna Horseman. Shout out if you're watching, Donna. And yeah, she was amazing with all the ideas and the suggestions that she had for us as teachers to help all of our students, no matter what their level or mode of communication was. I felt did a fabulous job with that. So yeah, I remember Boardmaker. I remember PEX. I had a student who had an AAC device. I eventually had two students that we had using iPads with
I've had
talking programs on them. And so there's so many, like you said, there's just so many different ways. Right. And to lessen, and oftentimes people will say, this kid's having this behavior and this behavior, and they'll want me to fix the behavior, and I don't necessarily address the behavior. Right. I do what you're talking about. I say, well, what's the communication behind it? What is the child needing? And so it isn't always, okay, well, you're going to be disciplined or you're going to be rewarded for the behavior. It's, let's figure out what you're saying.
Exactly.
And then that will take care of the behavior, because it is. Exactly. Communication is such.
It's vital.
It is. It's an integral, and it's a 24/7, 365 thing. Whether we mean to or not, we're communicating all the time.
Exactly.
I have to be very careful when I was teaching. I had to be, and I still have to be when I was teaching, that if a student gave me the wrong answer, to just keep my face the same. Right. Because I didn't want to give any clues that, you just gave me the wrong answer, or if I repeated a question that, they were like, well, did I get this right? And I'd be like, well, what do you think? I would try. It was something I really worked at, to try to just be very tonal in the same way all the time, in order to not give any hints away. But I still have to be very careful, because I speak a lot with my face.
So do I.
I communicate a lot, I should say, not speak. But yeah, like you mentioned before, communicating is different than talking. And I'm so glad that you have this service available to the people in the St. Louis area. But if I recall from our conversation, and you said it, you do it on Zoom. So it's not just that you're helping students in the St. Louis area.
No. I've seen families across the United States, but I also have a very special family that I see that's in South Africa.
That's incredible.
And it's the craziest story, because, when I started my business 2 years ago, I go on different Facebook pages, and sometimes if I see, I'm on different Facebook pages of, kids with special needs, or families with kids with special needs, or, autism moms, or, anything related to that, where a child would have some type of communication need. And so, I would just put in, like, this is my name, and, I'm a speech language therapist, and, my passion is with autism, although I do see kids with all different kinds of communication problems. I posted on one page, I guess that was like international, and this mom I know I can say her name because we're family now. She's like my sister. So, and I don't see her child anymore. Her mom, the mom does, but Louisa is the mom's name, and Ada is the little girl. And Louisa, I'll never forget. We talk about this all the time. She contacted me on, private messaged me on Facebook Messenger and just said, I have a 4.5-year-old daughter who is echolalic, meaning, she repeats everything she hears.
Okay.
And so I responded, oh, could I call you back tomorrow morning? Not knowing where she lived or anything.
Right, yeah.
She said, well, I live far away. I live in South Africa. Well, so that was a year and a half ago. And it's a very, very hard situation. The family, you hear South Africa, like it's a very wealthy country, and it is in some parts, but unfortunately in her situation, they have pretty much nothing. And it's just so hard. So I initially worked with, I shouldn't say worked. I taught Louisa, the mom, how to teach her daughter, Ada, how to functionally communicate. So when we do it through WhatsApp, and I was actually working with her 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, in the morning. So it's 8 hours difference. So it was dinner time for them. I worked with them 3 days a week for 3 hours a week for probably 9 months. They didn't really have much of anything. So I sent them, internationally, I sent them vocabulary pictures.
Oh, wow.
Because at the time, Ada was 4.5 years old. She didn't know what a phone was. She didn't know what a spoon was. She didn't know what a chair was. She didn't know anything. And you would talk to her and you're like, how are you? How are you? What's your name? What's your name? She didn't comprehend anything. And I don't know what the cause is, and they have clinics. She can't go to a doctor. So she's never been evaluated to see if she had autism, which I'm not a doctor, so I can't say, but, but the beauty is this is the power of like Zoom or through WhatsApp, and the power of me teaching a parent. So I taught, every week we would work on, okay, let's teach her what these things are. And then let's teach her how to build vocabulary, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I'm tired, those functional phrases. And I gave her pictures to communicate with. Unfortunately, like you had mentioned before about, there's so many different options to help a child communicate. I gave you one with, making the pictures through Boardmaker. But most of the families I work with, if their child's in school, they have a system. They have a device or they have an iPad. But many families I work with, the kids are 2 and they haven't gone into the school district. So they don't have the funding to get a device. So I'm like at the very beginning. And the same thing with this family, I had to mail everything internationally. So anyway.
And expensive.
It was
and takes time.
expensive. And so when I was teaching Ada, or teaching her mom how to help Ada communicate like with other people, I sent her 2 Barbie dolls. And, she's never seen a Barbie doll in her life. She had like a block and a pencil and a few other things. She didn't have anything. And I'll tell you, it was like almost $100 to send 2 Barbie dolls
Oh,
for shipping, but it doesn't matter because she needed it. And so we got to the point where Ada was, the Barbie and Bonnie were the names that she came up with. And Barbie and Bonnie wanted to play together. They wanted to go eat. And, so I taught the mom how to teach Ada how to answer questions, how to formulate sentences, vocabulary, have a conversation. And so now it's a year and a half later, and Ada, I don't see her for therapy anymore. Mom does everything on her own. And you had mentioned about, previously that how, I forget what you were saying about other people, once you learn it, you could help others. And so the system in South Africa, it's so unfortunate for people that are poor, I guess is the best word to put it. Once you're 35, you basically lose your job. And because it's the youth that gets jobs. So the mom and dad have been without a job for probably 7 years. And so we've been trying to process, how can she make money? How can Louisa make money? And a few weeks ago, we talked about it just hit me. I was like, Louisa, you can be a parent mentor of other parents who have children that have come up to you and said, what happened to your daughter? How come she's talking so much? How come she can answer questions? How come she can, communicate and have conversations? And I said, you know the skills to help them. I said, you're not a teacher, but you could, and I would be happy to, advise you, but you could be a parent mentor and give them support and give them hope and give them ideas. So that's, she's going to be making a business. I'm going to make a business card for her. And we're going to start on her mentoring other parents because
that's so cool.
She's we always joke about she's my mini me. That she is just phenomenal because we've spent so long, teaching mom how to help her daughter. It's just incredible when you give, it's I always tell parents, I don't know anything about accounting. My specialty is speech language therapy. But if you tell me what I need to know, then I could do my taxes, or then I could do what I need to know. And it's the same thing with, if I can empower parents with the knowledge that they need to know how to help their child, that child has no limits. That child could do anything and do anything. They're not stuck in, well, I wonder if they're going to talk. I wonder. It's you don't have to wonder because you're going to push that child because you know what to do to help your child.
That is such a beautiful story. And I love that they have become your family now. And I'm sure throughout and you said it in the same way that I used to say it. You said my kids, meaning all of your students that you've ever worked with over all of your clients, whatever other businesses might call them. But when those of us in the education world, when somebody comes into our life, they become our kid.
Yeah.
And we are always, forever, they are our kid.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I've been out of teaching 5 years now, and I have had just recently, I was interacting with somebody who is my kid, but he was my kid when he was 9 years old, and he's now 23. And I still call him my kid.
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're just embedded in our hearts. But so do you think that you physically will be able to go and see them or possibly have them come to the United States? Or has that already happened once?
The goal is to bring them to the United States. We've talked about that from the beginning.
Yeah.
Luis and I talk every single Sunday morning. I call her at 9 a.m. my time, which is like 5 p.m. their time. And we talk for an hour. And every time we talk, we always talk about, hopefully, I'm in contact with people in St. Louis. It's a big process for immigration.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And to bring the whole family, because she has a brother that's in high school. He's in his 12th year. So he's going to be graduating, and I'm hoping that, he'll be the first child in the family to go to college.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping that we could bring them all to St. Louis. It's like a no-brainer. It's something, I just don't know the process and contact people and things.
Right.
I'm trying to do as much as I can, but I'm just a speech language therapist.
Oh no, wait. We just talked about until you
I know.
That's right. So you're not just anything. You are a speech language pathologist. You are not a travel agency or an embassy employee to know how all of those things work. So
that's true.
Yeah. But that's so cool. And that's such an awesome thing. That is definitely one of the positives that has come about because of the pandemic is being able to reach out and, touching so many different families where in the past, if you had to physically be there, you were limited on who you could help. And so I'm certainly, with my consulting business, I there's this Barbara Mandrell song, I was country before country was cool. And, so I changed that to, I was teleconferencing and telecommunicating and doing Zoom before all of that was cool with the consulting stuff. But it's so exciting to think about the impact that she could have being a mentor to all the other moms in her community and her surrounding area.
Right.
And to know that you are the spark that ignited that.
And what I think is so cool is Louisa's, she is a completely different person. When I first met her, she was very scared. She was very quiet. Sure. She cried. She said she'd cry every single day because she didn't know how to help her child. They never had a computer. They never had internet. She didn't know there's not like you can call a speech language therapist there. And so she always jokes about she has her own private speech language personal speech language therapist. I said, well, now you have a sister, but I can be a speech language therapist when you need me to be.
Yeah.
But now she will talk about, other parents have made comments about her daughter not communicating before. And it was so hurtful to her.
Right.
And she said, now I want to help them because those are the parents that are coming back to her worrying about their child and saying, what did you do? How did your daughter talk? And so she's so kind and so loving and so giving. And so she wants to help these families that, in South Africa, the mandatory age for you to start school is age 7. So all of these years, the kids have nothing.
Right.
And, in the education system is very different. And we always talk about, if you have a child with special needs, you're put in a separate school and you're basically, you don't really grow, you don't really learn skills.
Right.
You're not ever integrated into regular education. It's just like, okay, this is what, you have ADD, you have autism, you have something else, you go to this school and there's no hope. And, so that's what her fear was, is that her daughter would go to this other school, but now she's homeschooling her.
Oh,
and
nice.
she's so empowered. And I think that that's the most important thing is if I can empower people to know what to do to help their child. It's like like you said, it's like a caterpillar coming out of a cocoon into a butterfly. That child has so many abilities,
Yeah,
so many options because that parent was not, or caregiver, or aunt,
sure,
uncle,
right.
grandparent. I mean, I work with so many family members. But the more everybody knows how to help that child has more opportunities to be that who they want to be and have more
Right.
options.
Yeah. And that's so much fits into hashtag no limits because like you just
Right.
mentioned, we as a society have a bad um, thing. I can't think of better word than that. A bad way about if we see somebody who doesn't communicate, who doesn't speak, we automatically make a very bad assumption.
Oh,
And that
absolutely.
is that the person doesn't know anything, doesn't comprehend, isn't somehow intelligent, or isn't intelligent at a high enough level, or
Right.
whatever it is. And so the fact that you are helping these families learn for themselves, but also
Right.
to teach their child how to communicate so that people don't think that way about them.
Right. It's
You know,
it's the greatest feeling of, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I never ever thought that I would be doing this when I was a speech language therapist in the school district.
mhm,
It really started like my last 8 years of working in the school district when I really was starting to work with kids in the ABA classes, that I saw the need. These parents were struggling. They didn't know what to do.
right.
And it's changed my life. I'm so happy. I mean, to be able to make a difference in somebody's life is the greatest feeling,
Yeah.
and to see these kids blossom and to give parents hope, and it's just, it's amazing. It's just absolutely makes you so happy.
And you can see that as you're talking. I mean,
Yeah,
you are
very
just,
passionate.
yeah, you're exactly, and just glowing, and with joy about the possibilities. And it truly is. I mean, when you give someone a voice, whether that is this kind of voice or some other type of voice, yeah,
Yes.
the world opens up so much more possibilities.
And that's what I think the most important thing is to help families understand that communication is not a voice. Communication is not just talking. There's so many different. I mean, I have a 17-year-old teenager that I work with on the autism spectrum, and he uses a lamp device, which is a iPad, an app on the iPad.
Okay.
And I mean that there's so many different ways to communicate, and I do work with him on his volume control, and trying to get him to um, communicate his basic wants and needs. But like I told his mom last week, I said, his primary communication is his talker.
Mhm.
We can work on his verbal skills, but if he is out in the community, if he's working somewhere, he has to be able to have a backup system where he can communicate anything he needs versus not knowing what words to use. And then you can't communicate. And then you end up getting frustrated. And then the
Right.
behavior, it's like if we can give them words through different means, they can, it's like their whole world opens up to them.
Yeah, exactly. So something that has, and I see this, and this is something that I've always struggled with, and I still see it in IEPs specifically because that's where
Yeah.
my
Oh, yeah.
world is when you're trying to teach the nuances of our language. How do you approach that? Like, how can you teach sarcasm, or how can you teach um, reading somebody's body language to have a better idea of what they're thinking or feeling?
That is out of my realm, because I primarily work with 2 to 6-year-olds.
Okay.
Even though I work with kids, that are on the spectrum up
Right.
until, well, my oldest is 17 of my kids.
Right.
But I honestly couldn't tell you that because I just know like functional communication,
Right.
and just building conversation.
Okay. No, that makes sense. And I apologize because I
Oh no, you're fine.
didn't catch that. But yeah, it truly is something that because again, that's where we're seeing a lot of behaviors in older kids.
Oh,
is,
absolutely.
That they're going through something, they don't know how to express it, and again, speaking more specifically to people in the autism community, not being able to understand those societal norms or
Right.
those nonverbal cues of getting along or being able to joke. And that's where most of my experience has been, is from like kindergarten to 8th grade, 9th grade age.
Right.
And so I have this really my own bias, cognitive bias, of when somebody talks about kids with delays or disabilities, people with disabilities. I think that age. I think school age.
Oh, sure.
I tend to forget about
the
leave school
one.
and they still have a rest of their life to So yeah, I apologize for
Oh no.
that,
I mean, you did bring up a good point, which I didn't think about. One thing I do work with, and it could be any age, is I create social stories to help whether it's a 3-year-old or whether it's a 20-year-old, understand social situations or understand like what to do in situations. How do you go up to someone and get their attention?
right.
Or what do I do if I can't do something? Or, I mean, it could be anything, moving into a new house, going
Right.
on an airplane. It could be any social, somebody took something away from me. What do I do?
Right.
So I create social stories, and actually I was accepted I have 10 social stories that are in this Autism Advocate Parenting magazine that started. My first social story went in December, and then I'll have 10 social stories each month. It's a phenomenal magazine
Awesome.
with very practical information that parents could like print out and like use. I mean, they have, like visual schedules. They have
wow.
I mean, it's amazing.
What's the name of the magazine?
It's called Autism Advocate Parenting Magazine. So there's 2 autism magazines for parents. One's Autism Parenting Magazine, and this one's Autism Advocate Parenting Magazine. Okay. But it's such a phenomenal, because I am very functional. Everything that I teach, it has to be relatable to everyday life.
Right.
And that's what they have many doctors and have different articles from therapists and everything, but they always have a section of, it might be visual schedules for home. It might be token boards. It might be all kinds of different things. But so they asked me to put 10 of my social stories in. So I love writing social stories because so many kids, and you don't even have to be on the autism spectrum to need a social story. I mean, there's many kids just with typical needs that just need help, and figuring out, like, I have a new baby sister or a new baby brother, and just learning step by step. And there might be like 6 pages of just like single pictures, and it just tells them how to handle a situation or what to do in a situation. I want somebody's attention. I can go up and I can tap them on the shoulder, or I can say, I want to play with you. there's just so many wonderful things to help parents help their child.
Yeah.
So many different strategies that are available.
There are. And the sad thing, I think, is there's not a central location for them to go to. I know, again, speaking of the stories from my book, that one of the people whose son is now in his 30s, so, she was raising him not too long after the law had come into place. And so everybody was still trying to figure things out. But she said, if I could have just gone to, again, not even a website back then, but, if somebody could have handed me a booklet and said, hey, here's all the different medical professionals that you can go to that will accept your child, or here's all the different resources that you can reach out to for this thing or that thing. And now with the internet, it does make things a lot easier, but I feel still is very difficult for people to find good, valid, reliable information.
I absolutely agree with you. And so when I started my business, I became a certified autism specialist, my focus is to create a Google Drive for each family that would contact me, whether I would see them for therapy or not. And I have a folder in the Google Drive for families who have a child on the autism spectrum of resources. And I have like Autism Speaks, Easter Seals, Fact. Oh my gosh, there's so many places. There's so many I just can't even think of that are so important. But I have like the name, the phone number, the email, or the website. Like Easter Seals is phenomenal because Easter Seals has family navigators. So if you have a child on the autism spectrum, you can contact a family navigator. If your child is, months old to 50, 60, 80 years old.
Oh, wow.
They have children family navigators and adult family navigators. And you tell them, I need a doctor who, will help me. I need a dentist. I need somebody to get my hair cut. I need a therapist. I need ABA. They will give you all the information that you need. A lot of times people will come to me because they've heard that I create this folder, and then they'll contact Easter Seals because a lot of people don't even think about Easter Seals.
Right. Yeah. It's not something I would have thought of.
My philosophy is I don't even have to work with a family. I can't tell you how many Google Drives that I've created for families that I've never, ever worked with. But it's important for me to create that folder for them, because by having a Google Drive, the reason I created a Google Drive is because so many times you email people things, attachments, and then they lose it and they can't remember which email it's in.
Yeah.
Or they save it to their desktop and they're trying to find it. But by having a Google Drive and I label everything very, very organized, then you have it on your computer, and anything that's related, you could stick in that Google Drive.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and then anytime that I get more information of other places, there is a very important place, and I just cannot think of it off the top of my head, that has like 500, across Missouri. Oh my gosh, it's Mo something. I want to say it's MOPAC, but it's not. Anyway,
is it Impact?
It's not Impact.
No. Okay.
I'll let you know afterwards. I cannot think of. I'm like, I know him so well, but I just can't think of it off the top of my head. But you could look up and find, anything you need. If you need, just like Autism Speaks has a phenomenal website that if you need a financial planner for special needs, if you need like respite care, if you need, Autism Speaks also has where you can kind of like a family navigator that Easter Seals has. SLARC has family navigators. Autism Speaks has, it's called ART, A-R-T, Autism Response Team, and it's similar to Family Navigator. It's just, I just want to let people know that there's hope. And because so many parents will call me, I've been researching the internet. I'm like, no, don't. I will tell you because I have it all. I've researched for so many years. I have all this updated information, that parents have a right, or caregivers and family members, they have a right to know. Many people don't even know that, insurances a lot of times will pay for ABA. A lot of time they don't know about, like the Missouri, regional center that eventually, thank you. Through regional center, it could take 2 years, once you fill out the application, it could take 2 years to be able to get, approval and funding, but you could get money, help, through the state. It's just so many people don't know this,
Right. It is. Like I said, we have this wonderful tool called the internet, but now I think maybe
it's
the opposite problem is before we didn't have any information, and now there's too much information, and people, trying to sort through it all. And so this is your website. It is rwltc.com, and I will put that over in the chat.
Great, thanks.
It looks like it's very easy to schedule an appointment with you, and we want to make sure that, because I think what you're offering is absolutely phenomenal, and just it's been such an honor to talk with you today and to get to know you a little bit more and what you do. Unfortunately, we are getting close to wrap up time. So I want to give you a last, little bit of time to just wrap up and have a bit of encouragement or whatever last thing it is that you want to say.
First of all, just thank you so much. This is the first podcast I've ever done in my life, and I'm so grateful to you. I just want families to know that, to know that their child, no matter if your child has speech language delays, whether your child has a diagnosis, whether your child, anything, don't ever assume that, your child can't do something. So many families I've heard that, I've heard them say, oh, my doctor says they're never going to do this. They're never going to do this. Don't believe that. It may be the case, but you get help and you learn strategies how to help your child, because the more that you can offer that child help, they may only be able to reach a certain level, but you're going to push them higher than what anybody ever expects them to be.
That's beautiful. And that I agree with that 100%. And the title of my book is Those Who Can't Teach, because all of the people in the book were told that they couldn't do something, either by a doctor, a teacher, a family member, neighbor, whatever. But yet they were able to accomplish, maybe not at a level that somebody else thought they would, but they've accomplished into that level to some degree. So,
exactly.
Again, Robyn, thank you so much. Join me next week. The next 2 weeks, actually, I will have the same guest. Next week, Shannon Yakabachi will be on here, and she is a fetal alcohol spectrum disorder expert. And so next week, she's going to be talking about all of that and what that all encompasses. And then the following week, she's going to talk about her own personal experiences with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So you don't want to miss the next 2 weeks for sure.
Wonderful.
And I will put it in the chats again, how to contact Robyn, and definitely reach out to her. She has some amazing resources, it sounds like. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you. I appreciate it.